In 2063, the U.S. government passed a law to approve human testing on convicts as an alternative to life in prison. The trials are run in subterranean nuclear-powered laboratories all across the nation. During a routine reactor test at one of these facilities, an explosion occurred and staff were evacuated, but the test subjects were left behind to fend for themselves. We are Four Corner Guys, and this is Reactor Revolt. The game begins with 50 players in a central starting location. Their objective is to find one of several exits in the randomly generated laboratory before the expanding radiation zone kills them. When every test subject has either died or reached an exit, the next round begins on the next floor, and this continues until only one survives. In this fight for survival, the test subjects are armed with only their fists and a few materials for building traps and obstacles, but the experiments they've been subject to have made them capable of consuming various power-ups and each other to become stronger and resist the radiation. Our intention was to create a battle royale for the PC inspired by popular titles that could attract the same teenage demographic while standing out from the crowd. That's why we went with the inside-out approach of escaping from one central location, and instead of only having randomized loot, entire level layouts are randomized for a unique experience with every round. Just like others of its kind, Reactor Revolt will be fast-paced and competitive, but the core mechanics will be easier to pick up for new players while still providing a high skill ceiling. The modular level system and interchangeable power-ups are designed to leave plenty of room for the game to grow after its release. Using the left mouse button, test subjects can attack enemies with their fists. At the start of the game, these attacks do very little damage but are enhanced by various power-ups found throughout the level. Subjects can use this mechanic to attack each other and destroy certain obstacles. If an attack is timed just right against an opponent, the attack will be parried and damage will be dealt to the initial attacker instead. Test subjects can protect themselves from attackers by holding the right mouse button, which activates the defend mechanic. This defense will break after taking a certain amount of damage and will cause the defender to stagger for half a second, leaving them vulnerable. Blocking at the exact moment that an enemy attacks will immediately break the defense, but also cause the attacker to become staggered for 1 full second, leaving a small window of opportunity for a counterattack, as demonstrated in the third frame of this example. Test subjects can build obstacles to block enemy advances and traps to limit a subject's movement speed, cause damage, or briefly disable them. Holding the Q key opens up the build menu, where test subjects will click the desired build item with the left mouse button, aim it in the desired location with their mouse, and release the Q button to place it. Right-clicking will exit the build menu without placing anything. Test subjects must choose the right time to build since they can't move or perform any other actions while in the build menu. The consume mechanic has two functions. Both require pressing the E key when prompted. First, consuming the bodies of fallen enemies will replenish health and grant greater radiation resistance. Second, the test subjects can find several different power orbs throughout the laboratory and consume them. Consuming one will cause it to disappear from the level, and the consume ability will go on a 5-second cooldown. In this example, an unpowered test subject, represented by the white model, is consuming a red power-up, and their color changes to match what they've consumed. When a test subject is already powered up, they will be able to use the E key next to another power-up to implement the swap mechanic and exchange it for another one. In this example, the test subject is swapping one power-up for another, leaving the first one behind in its place. Just like when consuming a power-up for the first time, the ability goes on a 5-second cooldown after swapping. Spellbreak is a battle royale game that uses a similar method of granting players different powers and swapping between them. What makes Reactor Revolt different is that combat takes place in melee range and focuses on using one power at a time instead of two. Also, the powers in Spellbreak are fantasy-themed elemental abilities, whereas Reactor Revolt has sci-fi-themed radiation-based abilities. Fortnite and Reactor Revolt both allow the player to influence their surroundings by building. What separates the two mechanics is what the player has to sacrifice. Fortnite requires the player to spend time collecting resources from the environment before they can build. Reactor Revolt has no such requirement, but the player must remain stationary for the time it takes to build, which leaves them vulnerable. Just like Fall Guys, Reactor Revolt consists of multiple rounds with randomized maps, and players must meet specific requirements to qualify for advancement, but that's where the similarities end. Reactor Revolt's attack mechanic allows players to kill each other as a way to ensure that they're the last one standing. Each level's layout is also modular and randomized between rounds, instead of merely rotating between a limited number of predetermined levels. This mock-up depicts the very beginning of the game, where players load into the starting point with their unpowered test subjects. Here, a test subject is consuming a power-up found in the lab. This mock-up shows a test subject with a stealth power-up hiding and watching while the other two subjects fight in front of the illuminated exit. This concludes our presentation.